I always believed that if something was wrong in a marriage, you'd feel it. A shift in tone, a coldness in bed, or maybe just that lingering instinct that something wasn't right. But with Ethan, it wasn't like that. Not at first. We had been married for 12 years. We weren't exactly newlyweds, but I thought we still had something real. Our home in suburban Oregon felt safe, predictable, normal. We had our routines, morning coffees, shared Spotify playlists, and Friday date nights that sometimes ended in sweatpants and takeout. But we were okay, or so I thought. Until that Tuesday night. I was cleaning out the junk drawer in the kitchen. You know, that one drawer every house has where receipts, expired coupons, and dead batteries live like roommates who never talk. I wasn't even looking for anything. Just trying to declutter the chaos. When Ethan's tablet buzzed on the counter. It was a message preview. A name I didn't recognize. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow night. Same place. Red heart. First I froze. Maybe it was a coworker. Maybe someone just being friendly. But the heart emoji wasn't subtle. And neither was the smile that crept across his face when he came into the room and grabbed the tablet. He didn't notice me staring at him. Or maybe he just didn't care. That night I couldn't sleep. I laid beside him in the dark, listening to the sound of his breathing, wondering how long I had been living with a stranger. Every moment from the past year started to play in my mind on loop. The last-minute work trips. The gym sessions that went longer than they used to. The sudden urge to start wearing cologne again. I didn't want to believe it. I needed to know more. So I did what I never thought I would do. I went through his tablet the next morning. The password was the same it had always been, our wedding anniversary. Funny how he never changed it. Maybe he didn't think I had it in me to look. Maybe I didn't either. But I did. And what I found felt like fire through my veins. Her name was Claire. Their messages were all over the place, on WhatsApp, on email, even in shared Google Calendar notes labeled with vague terms like consulting dinner and strategy catch-up. But it wasn't business. It was personal, intimate, raw. Photos, jokes, complaints about me. He called me emotionally distant. He said I didn't understand him anymore, that he felt more alive when he was with her. And then came the final blow. A calendar invite for dinner this Friday, 7 p.m., at Leona's, a restaurant we used to go to for anniversaries. That's when the ache inside me turned into something else. Not rage, not revenge, but clarity. I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. I wouldn't scream or throw his clothes into the driveway like some Lifetime movie cliché. Instead, I would go to that dinner. I'd reserve a table right next to theirs. And I'd bring someone with me. Someone who had just as much skin in this game. Claire's husband. But first I needed to find him. I didn't know where to start. I barely knew Claire's last name. Only what I could piece together from the contact info Ethan had saved. No photo. Just Claire M. A name that felt harmless, generic. Until now. But he'd made a mistake. One of their emails included a forwarded itinerary from a weekend trip they took to Napa Valley. He'd lied and told me he was on a corporate retreat. The email header listed Claire's full name. Claire Monroe. That was all I needed. It took a few hours of careful digging, Facebook, LinkedIn, even Zillow to cross-check property records. I knew this was borderline obsessive. But when you're standing on the edge of your own reality and looking down into someone else's, you have to climb. You have to. And then I found him. His name was Daniel Monroe. Married to Claire for 6 years. A software developer, judging by his company profile. Clean cut. From the pictures I saw, he looked like the kind of man who helped neighbors fix their lawnmowers on weekends and never forgot a birthday. One photo showed him holding Claire close at a family barbecue. Another had him smiling at her with pride in his eyes. That image haunted me. It reminded me of how Ethan used to look at me. I didn't know what I was going to say when I reached out. I wasn't even sure I should reach out. What if he didn't believe me? What if he already knew? What if he didn't want to know? But I couldn't go to that dinner alone. I needed him to see what I saw, to feel it, to sit beside me while our spouses laughed and whispered and shared dessert like they weren't tearing lives apart in the process. So I messaged him. Simple, careful, respectful. Y Daniel. You don't know me, but I believe our spouses have been seeing each other. I'm not looking for drama. I just thought you had the right to know. If you'd like to talk in person, I'm happy to meet in a public place. No pressure. I have proof. Rachel Dawson. My finger hovered over the send button for a long time. And then I sent it. I expected silence. Anger. Maybe even a threat. But what I got was this. Rachel. I've suspected for a while now. I didn't know who it was, but thank you. I'd like to meet Daniel. We met the next day at a quiet park cafe. The kind with too many potted plants and acoustic covers playing softly in the background. He was nervous. So was I. But as soon as I slid Ethan's messages across the table to him, Daniel's face changed. He stopped blinking. His jaw tightened. He leaned back like someone had just punched him. I knew she was lying about the Napa trip, he whispered. She said it was for a girls' weekend. He stared at the screen a long time, then handed it back to me. So what now? He asked, voice low. I looked at him and answered with no hesitation. We go to dinner. Daniel didn't say much as we sat there making a plan. He was calmer than I expected, but his silence didn't feel passive. It was the kind of silence that comes from someone keeping their emotions locked up tight, like a dam you know won't hold forever. I don't want a scene, he finally said, sipping his coffee, but I do want to see it for myself. I want to watch her lie. Right to my face. I nodded. Same. We booked the table under my name. Leona's Friday at 7 p.m. I chose the table beside theirs, not across, not too close but close enough to hear. I even called the restaurant and made up a story about wanting the same table I had for our anniversary last year. The hostess was happy to oblige. I knew Ethan would recognize me if he saw me immediately, so I planned to look different. I scheduled a hair appointment. Bought a dress I wouldn't normally wear, sleek black bold. Something he wouldn't expect. Daniel kept his end simple. A dark blazer, nothing flashy. He shaved. He looked sharp but worn, like a man dressing up for a funeral he wasn't sure how to mourn. On the day of the dinner, I stood in front of the mirror longer than I had in years. My hands were shaking as I put on eyeliner. I didn't recognize myself. There was pain in my eyes but also steel. For once, I wasn't dressing for Ethan's approval. I was dressing for myself. Daniel picked me up in a rideshare so we could walk in together. We didn't talk much in the car. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy with purpose. We both knew what we were walking into. When we stepped inside Leona's, the lighting was soft and golden. The kind of place where secrets feel safe and time moves slow. The host smiled and led us toward our table. I saw them before they saw us. Ethan and Claire sat with their backs to the entrance, laughing. She touched his wrist when she leaned in to whisper something, and I felt something inside me curl up and die. Daniel reached for the back of the chair and paused. Still want to do this? I looked at Ethan's hand resting on top of hers. I have to. We sat down. For the first few minutes they didn't even notice us. They were in their own little world, sharing a bottle of red wine and reminiscing about something that made them both smile. Watching it made my throat go dry. Claire wore a red dress I'd seen once before in an online ad. A little too tight for a business dinner. Her hair was perfectly curled, her lipstick darker than usual. Ethan looked relaxed, like a man on vacation, like someone who didn't just get off work, like someone who belonged to someone else. Daniel leaned toward me slightly and whispered, "They still haven't noticed us." I nodded. Just wait. Then, like something out of a surreal movie, the waitress walked up to their table. "Would you like to start with an appetizer?" she asked. Claire smiled. "Maybe the truffle flatbread." And then she turned her head slightly. She saw me first. Her expression froze. She blinked twice like her eyes were playing tricks on her. Then she saw Daniel. And her lips parted, but no words came out. Ethan turned slowly, confused. And when his eyes landed on me, the wine glass in his hand slipped and hit the table with a soft clink. I didn't flinch. Neither did Daniel. We both just sat there, staring at the people we once loved. I picked up my menu, calmly flipping it open. "Smells like betrayal in here," I said without looking up. For a few seconds time stopped. Ethan just stared at me. Not with guilt. Not with regret. But with disbelief, like he couldn't believe I had the nerve to show up. Like I was the one who'd ruined the evening. Claire looked like she wanted to slide under the table and disappear. Daniel, on the other hand, didn't blink. He reached for the water glass and took a sip like we were simply at a business dinner. No one said anything. I could hear the soft jazz playing through the restaurant speakers, the clink of silverware against plates, and my own heartbeat in my ears. Then Ethan finally spoke. "What the hell is this?" His voice was low but sharp, the kind of tone he used when he wanted to stay composed in public but was seconds away from unraveling. "I think you know," I said, meeting his eyes. Claire's mouth opened, then closed again. She looked at Daniel. "Daniel, this isn't what it looks like," she said quickly. This was a mistake. We were just talking." "Oh, spare me," Daniel interrupted calmly, folding his napkin across his lap. "You texted him 'can't wait to feel your lips again' yesterday. Was that a typo?" Claire flushed so hard her neck turned red. Ethan looked like he wanted to get up, but he stayed frozen, glancing between me and Daniel like we were ghosts from a life he'd buried. "You went through my messages?" he asked me. I laughed, quiet, bitter. "You invited another woman to the same restaurant we used to celebrate our anniversary, Ethan. I think that says more than any message." He swallowed hard. I could see the moment it hit him how badly he'd misjudged me, how easily he thought he could lie. "I was going to tell you," he muttered. "I just didn't know how." "You mean after dessert? Or after you got tired of her too?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Daniel leaned forward. "Why don't you both explain how long this has been going on?" Claire whispered. "For months." Ethan looked at her, startled. I turned my head slowly toward him. "You told her?" She figured it out. It wasn't like I wanted to involve her. "She's your mistress, Ethan." I think she was already involved. Claire wiped at her cheek. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It just, Daniel, you've been so distant lately and I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. I never wanted to hurt anyone." Daniel laughed once. Not cruelly. Just exhausted. "You wanted to feel something new," he said quietly. "But you didn't stop to think about what you were breaking. You just saw something shiny and chased it." Ethan looked furious now. "Okay, enough. Can we not do this here?" "Why not?" I asked. "You chose this table. We just made better company." The waitress came by with a strained smile, clearly sensing the tension. "Would you like to order?" I turned to her and said, "We'll just take the check." Ethan flinched. "Wait. Can we please talk in private?" I stared at him. My husband. The man I'd shared a mortgage and memories with. The man who used to bring me coffee in bed and whisper, "Always you," into my ear on rainy mornings. But now I saw it. All of it. The distance. The lies. The shift. "No," I said simply. I stood up. Daniel followed. Claire didn't move. She just kept wiping her eyes with the edge of her cloth napkin. Ethan tried again. "Rachel, don't walk out like this." I turned to him, my voice steady, my eyes cold. "You already did." The air outside Leona's was cold, but not biting. I didn't shiver. Daniel and I walked in silence for a block before he finally stopped beside his car. "Well," he said, hands in his pockets, "that was one hell of a dinner." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "I thought I'd feel better," I admitted. "Like I'd finally be free of something. But I just feel empty." Daniel nodded, looking down at the ground. "It's like watching someone burn down the house you built," he said. "Even if you didn't light the match, you still lose everything inside." That hit me harder than I expected. We stood there for a while, not saying much, just letting the night settle around us like dust. Part of me wanted to cry, but the tears didn't come. Maybe they dried up from months of being ignored, questioned, made to feel like I was asking for too much when all I wanted was the truth. Daniel finally said, "What are you going to do?" I didn't answer right away. "I don't know," I said. "I mean, the easy answer is divorce. The hard part is figuring out how to rebuild myself after this." He nodded again. "Yeah." Then he looked at me and said something I wasn't expecting. "You know, you handled that with a lot more grace than I think I could have managed on my own." I smiled faintly. "Grace, huh? Is that what we're calling quiet rage now?" He chuckled. "Maybe. But still, thanks for telling me. Most people would have let it slide out of shame or fear or just plain exhaustion." "I almost did," I admitted. "But I couldn't pretend anymore. If I had to sit through another dinner pretending like everything was fine, I think I would have broken." He opened his car door then paused. I think we'll both be better off. Eventually. Might take a while. But we'll get there. I nodded. Then I turned and walked toward my own car. That night, Ethan came home late. I was in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling like it held the answers. I didn't speak when he walked in. I didn't even look at him. He stood in the doorway for a while. I'm sorry, he finally said. I didn't reply. I didn't mean for it to get this far. Claire and it was a mistake. I don't even know what I was thinking. I turned my head slowly to face him. You were thinking about yourself. That's all. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just stood there, the weight of it all finally pressing down on him. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. You already did. I rolled over and turned off the lamp. The following week I filed for separation. He didn't fight it. Didn't beg. Didn't send flowers or love songs or tearful voicemails. And honestly, that made it easier. But the hard part came after. The questions from family. The awkward stares from mutual friends. The quiet in the house. The grocery lists cut in half. The bed that suddenly felt too big. There were days I wanted to scream. And others where I barely got out of bed. I told myself I had to stay strong, but strength doesn't always look like resilience. Sometimes it looks like crying in the shower or answering emails with puffy eyes or eating toast for dinner 3 nights in a row because you just can't bring yourself to cook. Daniel checked in a few times. Nothing romantic. Just 2 people who shared a moment of truth in a restaurant that used to mean something else. I started therapy, he said once. It helps. Some days. I followed suit. And slowly things began to shift. I got my own bank account. I painted the guest room. I took up pottery badly. But still. Something new. Something mine. And one day, months later, I looked in the mirror and didn't see a woman broken by betrayal. I saw someone who survived it. 6 months passed. Divorce proceedings were quiet. Ethan didn't contest anything. Maybe because he knew there was nothing left to fight for. Or maybe because deep down he understood the damage he'd done. We exchanged only what was necessary. Legal documents, asset paperwork, a few cold texts about the house. The silence between us had become a permanent wall. But I didn't need to climb it anymore. What no one tells you about healing is how strangely it arrives. Not in big declarations or grand comebacks, but in moments so ordinary you almost miss them. Like going grocery shopping and not forgetting the list. Like waking up and not feeling the weight of someone else's lies on your chest. Like laughing, actually laughing, at something on TV without feeling guilty for feeling joy. That's how I knew I was coming back to myself. One crisp morning in late fall, I took a walk through the park with a coffee in hand, breathing in the kind of stillness you can only appreciate after surviving a storm. The trees were turning amber and gold. Leaves crunched underfoot like soft applause. That's when I saw him, Daniel. He was sitting on a bench near the pond, tossing breadcrumbs to a few lazy ducks. He looked different. Lighter. His shoulders weren't weighed down like they had been. He saw me and smiled. We hadn't talked in months. I sat beside him wordlessly, and for a while we just watched the birds. Claire signed the final papers last week, he said after a few minutes. I nodded. Mine went through last month. We both sat there in that strange shared peace, 2 people who'd been cracked open by the same betrayal, and somehow found something steady in each other's presence. Funny, he said. How we were brought together by the worst night of our lives. Yeah, I said. And yet, I'm kind of glad we met. He turned to me. You know, Rachel, I think we survived the worst of it. I smiled. A real one this time. We did. Then something unexpected happened. He pulled something out of his coat pocket, a small envelope. My name was written on it. I was cleaning out some stuff the other day and found this. From Claire's purse. She never sent it to you. But I thought, maybe you should read it. I hesitated, then took it. Inside was a handwritten note. Rachel, I never wanted to destroy your life. I didn't mean to fall in love with him. I know that doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know. It wasn't about being better than you. It was about running from myself. I'm sorry. Claire. I folded the note slowly, letting out a long breath. I don't know if that makes anything better, I said. Me neither, Daniel replied. But maybe it helps put it down. We sat there for another hour. Not as allies in pain, but as people slowly finding new shapes after being broken. He didn't ask to see me again. And I didn't make promises. But in that moment I realized something. Redemption doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it's just walking away without dragging the bitterness with you. A year later I stood in my own apartment. Small. Quiet. But it was mine. I cooked for myself. Slept better. Started writing again. Something I hadn't done in years. My therapist once said, "What you lost wasn't love. What you're finding now is peace." And she was right. Ethan tried to reach out once. An email. Said he was sorry. Asked how I was. I never responded. Because I wasn't that woman anymore. The one who begged for answers or chased closure. I had sat next to the wreckage. Heard their laughter over wine. Looked betrayal straight in the eye. And I didn't break. Instead I got up from the table. And I walked away with something he could never take back. Myself. The end.